Hello, and welcome to the Southcoast Artists Index, where artists, performers, and writers, as well as curators, directors, and supporters, anyone with ties to the creative community, drops by to introduce themselves to you. We'll talk about their beginnings, their vision, their passion, and so much more. The Southcoast Artists Index podcast is brought to you in part by Heavenly Spirits, who invites you to celebrate the art of life and creative communities everywhere.
So this is Jeff Angeley here for the Southcoast Artists Index, and I'm going to be talking with Carl Simmons, and Carl is here.
Hello. Yeah.
Those are pretty easy names. I don't think we have to spell those.
Oh, I just made a sound. Oh. That's the music I've been working on lately. Like,
electronic music, huh?
yes, just all stolen stuff. Yeah. Common sounds.
Yeah. Well, how are you?
I'm doing all right.
That's good.
And you?
I'm doing well. Thanks. So where to begin? I know that you've been making a lot of visual art the last couple of years, but you have decades of experience making music in the greater South Coast area, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Are you still making music presently?
I don't know that I am. Not in a very active way. I will make some music for an animation or something like that sometimes. Or I definitely am not playing the guitar lately or doing songs, but yeah, it's more like Foley stuff for my video work is what I'm doing. I goofed around the other day after I talked to you though, just like banging on
that's cool.
Some
yeah.
I guess literally pots and pans. My daughter's little toy pot and pan thing had this rack to hold them in, and it was this great resonating metal sound. And yeah,
the music that you make for the animations is I know I've seen some of your animations have like kind of machines built into them, for lack of a better term, where the machine is kind of actively playing something.
Sure. I think I know what you mean. Like sort of kinetic sculptures in a way that are in themselves silent, but then maybe I'll add the music that.
See, I thought that they were making the music.
Oh no, maybe you're talking about something else, and that is, I was doing when I first got into Instagram a couple of years ago. I got very into, I guess they'd be kinetic sound sculptures would be one way to talk about them, where I used record players a lot just as a machine, as a revolving mechanism that would, and then some coat hangers with some string and like a wooden ball in the end to hit whatever I'd set up in the space. And I did that with one of my favorites was with a bunch of Virginia Dare bottles, glass bottles, and it just bonked around inside, and even with like a wooden crate. That was probably the last thing I did, like musically focused, I guess. Well, no, because then I guess we had a band after that. Solo wise, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, so that stuff was where I was at, I guess, musically, and where I've talked with maybe doing live with what the Burcells was like, incorporating some kind of kinetic element. I guess for me, I really love how much that removes me from it. It's there's not I don't know, chance. It's not really chance operations, but it's like, yeah, it's whatever, and it changes a lot too. So
you like the element where would you want it to have an air of predictability, or do you want it to be like a totally unpredictable, like the machine plays what the sculpture plays what it plays kind of thing?
Yeah, I think there's a balance there that I really like. That was a big part when me and Mike Ribeiro were doing what we kind of maybe called what was inspired by free jazz we were listening to. A lot of times we would a big thing we picked up on from what those folks were doing was a repetition, but it changes, not being beholden to repetition, how it kind of gradually alters. And that's really great when you're not super talented at repeating something over and over again. It's just going to change because I couldn't even get it to repeat if I wanted to.
Yeah, yeah.
And these machines do that because it would like bang. If it were a banjo, it would move a little bit and get out of reach. Or,
Yeah.
if the wider scope you had of it physically, I felt like the more chance of it to get off track.
I remember.
And it's always been, yeah.
I was just gonna say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No.
I remember a tour. Somebody came through the Criterion some years ago. It was one of those guys that's like kind of like something out of the 70s, like fusion jazz guitar player guy.
Okay.
And he had like, I don't know, like a whole stage backdrop of things that he was manipulating with his guitar.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like kind of a different thing. It was like, like he hit this fret and like a cymbal hit in the back.
Oh, yeah. No.
Yeah.
Oh, sounds like a magic act.
Yeah.
Someone behind it just hitting the cymbal. Yeah, this was, I don't know. Yeah, this was just that was maybe what I was doing last, I guess, and
Okay.
what I'm interested in maybe and exploring more away from.
Yeah.
Sort of moving away from the song. I don't know. I'm sure I'll fall in love with songwriting and face singing again, but right now it's like, I don't know.
So you've always had interdisciplinary interests, and now it sounds like recent years it's been more visual art. And if I remember correctly, you have a past with theater as well, right?
Oh, barely.
Barely?
Like when I was 13 or 12.
Okay.
So, that's an impactful time in your life, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah, for sure.
yeah, I have not revisited the I don't know what it's called.
But you do take on characters sometimes in performance, yes?
Oh yeah, I'll do that. I'll do that when we're playing. I think it's Christmas time. One time I played at No Prop, and it was just a mess. Like I didn't set it up right, the sound, and I just became the weasel from the Nightmare River Bottom band.
Yeah, man.
I just pretended. All right, I'm just gonna be the weasel in that, and I did the whole set as that character.
That's cool.
But I don't know many other examples. But I always, I visualize things, when I play, and there's often a character that is like a secret or whatever, or it's not even really fully realized in my head.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I always have had kind of a hang up with the whole like songwriter as self demand, kind of like your voice, and finding your voice and things like that, meaning my voice in my instance.
Right.
And yeah, I've always kind of dipped into theater, like you said, of like, why can't it be that instead? Why does it have to be me, like raw me? And why is that so held as the criteria that we have to kind of live up to so often?
You feel like you create from that perspective as well? Are you
Oh, yeah.
creating, do you feel like you're creating autobiographically, or do you feel like you're kind of taking on other characters and what you imagine that they would create?
Yeah, a lot more in my younger days. When I first started writing songs, it was all character-based stuff, and I really like uh, did not do autobiographical. But in the last, nowadays my new songs are 10 years old or something. I laugh about, you know. Um, but in my latest songs, and since I've become had a kid, that's sort of this introspection has affected my songwriting. And yeah, the last decade or so, I started being okay with writing autobiographical material. But the vast majority of, if you looked at my whole songbook, I guess, there's a lot of like character-based stuff, and like, or mostly, yeah.
Do you feel like when you are, like as you are right now in your current phase where you're doing a lot more visual artwork, do you feel like you're ever translating between what you would be doing in character for music, but now it is visual art? Or is it just a completely different medium, different thought process?
Yeah, I think it's just completely different, or I'm just blind to the similarities. I think yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know. My brain doesn't quite know how to compute how they would be the same, other than like banging out what I can muster on a guitar and what I can bang out with my iPhone. Basically, maybe there's a similarity there with like limitations of tools and talent for sure. I've always been a fan of, that idea of a limitation of talent and ability, as a inspiration. Uh,
Well, actually, here's a good question. I know this podcast interview about your music work, but how long have you been making visual art? Is this something that was kind of always there, or is it something that's a new interest?
yeah, I mean, it's always been there. I've wanted to be a filmmaker. When I was at Mass Art, that was my focus. Um, but I never really accumulated much work. I draw. I've always drawn. I love to draw. It's probably my favorite thing to do. Um, and so I've recently been into watercolor. Yeah, so at Mass Art, I started focusing on film before I dropped out second time. But I with for me it was with getting into Instagram a couple of years ago, or I don't know, about 3 years ago. I really just started making a ton of photographic work, uh, and stop motion animation with my phone, and that just having a smartphone and being okay with working with that. Yeah, it's been about 3 years now, really working pretty steadily. I slowed down a lot over the last year or so, but yeah, the visual stuff is it's always been on my mind, but it just started really producing stuff fairly recently.
Do you think that any portion of that is a result of having less public availability with the pandemic and stuff like that, where visual art can be kind of shared without as much need for in-person social interaction?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a big part of it. Very honestly, like my amp blew out like very like a couple weeks into the pandemic, and I just haven't had an amp too, and I really haven't had the drive to go replace it, or I was too creeped out to go replace it for a long time there too. Just felt unsafe about I've been very in the house. Um, and yeah, there really is there. I haven't quite tapped into social media for music, and maybe that's a good thing that I haven't. But yeah, I music has no. It's I haven't gotten into Bandcamp or any of those places for my music to live.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I did YouTube for a while, and that was a little scary because it's so open to the world, and I got kind of yeah, I don't love that until I learned how to disable comments. That really helped my,
Oh, yeah.
you know.
That's an interesting sidetrack conversation there. I mean, I guess we're just, at this point, we're talking about creative pursuits in general. You were saying that Instagram was kind of a place that kind of gave you an impetus for creating. It gave you a platform for sharing things that you were creating. Do you feel like the little like button that's attached to things that are shared impact your creating?
Oh,
No.
absolutely. No, I mean, like, I'm shaking my head no because there's no question in my mind that it does. Um,
Oh, yeah.
oh yeah, super.
It's a weird
And
thing. I interviewed Christian Camaro yesterday, and you know Christian. We had
yeah,
the same
totally.
conversation about how it's like the platforms give us an opportunity to share things with people, but then also they can kind of insidiously wire themselves into your head where, like, like if an algorithm or whatever makes it so that you get more likes on something one day, like it's hard to like take that information out the next time that you're building something or making something.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's better to be more transparent about that than not talk about it. But yeah, I've had like in visual art, I've had things that like didn't get liked, so I just like abandoned like threads, of things I was exploring, and then they just totally bomb on Instagram, one post, and I'm just like, oh, I back off. You
Mm,
know,
mm,
I've I've definitely I've even done that before. Um, I've gotten better, I feel, I hope, over the past year or so, or 6 months of, I feel like Instagram is slowly dying. And by, you know, you just don't get the views you used to get and the likes, I think. And I think people don't like as much as they used to, like actively press that button.
yeah.
Um, because it just changed something in the way we interact with this material has changed, I think.
You're trying to avoid the move over to TikTok.
Yeah, I don't want to do that.
Have you been over there at all?
I don't know, no, I'd have to download it, I guess.
Yeah.
Not-
I just took a look at it for the first time a few weeks ago. It's really different.
okay.
Yeah, it's really different. It's something else entirely. I guess that's the trick of things now is that there's always something else entirely right around the bend.
Right. Yeah, I felt like, I don't know. I'm sure I would like it if I let myself, but I don't. Right now I'm telling myself like, nah, just let it go and like get back into the real world.
Yeah.
The and whatever that is, of course that's the real world. But like just I do shows at museums and galleries and
Yeah.
just getting back into that. And you mentioned theater. That's another thing I really want to keep on the thinking about getting into, like real live performances of
Mm-hmm.
staged acting based things.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather I only have so much whatever bandwidth or whatever in my brain to focus on any of this stuff. So I'd rather leave space for doing some of that stuff, my
Yeah.
installation work, and get back into music when I feel comfortable with playing a show again or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Um, take a little segue for a second. Most of the people that I am interviewing, so I'm one of several interviewers for Southcoast Artist Index. Ron Fortier is the person who got me involved, and a couple other people to do music-related podcast interviews. And I tried to make a focus with the people that I'm interviewing on folks who have some ties to either traditional music or avant-garde music, which are
Mhm.
interests of mine that I think that might not get represented all the time in this kind of indexing. And you have a tie to both of those styles of music, so
Right.
I just wanted to maybe talk about some of your music work that has been, and some of the things that you've done, where you come from as a musician, and I think that my knowledge of your work pretty much stems from like the focal tone kind of
Okay.
time period. So I
Yeah.
don't know what you were doing before that, what led up to that, your interest in those styles of music, that kind of thing. Where's your uh, where are the beginnings of your musical interests, and also the beginnings of your music creation?
Yeah. I think it probably. I felt like I was pretty late to it. Like I wasn't a musician in high school. I was a painter. Um, and but then when I in college, I met a painter, my friend Shannon Purcell, and him and his buddies were in bands. They lived in Western Mass, and my who became one of my closest friends, my buddy Gabe Sullivan, um, was they were improving music. It wasn't you didn't. It was just banging out chords. There were some really talented players they hung out with too, but Gabe was playing the auto harp, a detuned, not even like systematically detuned auto harp, just a by ear. I'll turn the knobs and make it out of tune to something I like, auto harp, and improvising lyrics. And then we would just end up doing that when we hung out, recording music and improvising it. And that became the basis of what I've done ever since, kind of in some way. All of a sudden, having that freedom and writing material on the spot. And yeah, so my buddy Gabe made an album on a 4-track. I think he had a Fostex 4-track. And it was terrific. It was the best thing I'd ever heard, at that time. And, and that's set me on the course of me making, I got a test cam, and started making my own stuff too. And, we touched on social media a little bit there, and we were recording whole albums. I recorded whole albums for like 4 dudes, like just to basically share with my pals.
Mm-hmm.
Which I kind of miss. I have like a nostalgia for, I guess. And we were just kind of feeding off each other, and an album a year was pretty much where we're at for a while,
Mm-hmm.
and just going back and forth and inspiring each other. And the 4-track home recording has always been my passion. I've never wanted to go. We talked about this last time we talked, but I've never had a desire to go in a studio or anything like that. It's any desire I have with recorded sound is trying to get a at-home sound. And the best way to do that, I think, is to record at home,
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
like vocal tones, just recorded in my bedroom,
Mm-hmm.
Honeysuckle Tendrils was recorded in my bedroom as well. And
Which one
yeah,
was Which one of those is first?
Honeysuckle's first.
Oh, okay. So I guess I something from before Focal Tone. Was Honeysuckle was not your first record though?
I wouldn't call it that. No, there was just a self-titled, just called Carl Simmons. That was
Okay.
I recorded on a handheld tape recorder. That was like, I don't know, standard size tape, and that was a revelation to me. That I could just record an album on this machine I got at Radio Shack for 30
Yeah.
bucks. And tape was totally not the latest. CDs were, you were like a pro if you had a CD.
Hmm.
But that and Honeysuckle were on tape, just tape. And Focal Tone was Dan Smith, who you might know. I don't know. He used to play at the Immigrant and at the Pasta House. He put Focal Tone on CD. Like, I didn't have that technology.
Oh yeah. So Dan Smith, I think I might know who that was. He like a
Danny? Yeah.
UPS driver, like an older guy? Like was he like a UPS driver by day and Irish balladeer by night?
I don't know that. No, I don't. I think he just was able to. I don't think he just did that. I don't know.
Okay.
But I totally could be completely wrong.
Was he an Irish balladeer? Or
Sure.
totally not on the right track at all.
Yeah, I think he played a lot of Irish material.
Okay.
So I don't know if that brings us to the actual question of
No, I think that's
traditional music.
That's well, sort of. I mean, Focal Tone obviously plays a lot on traditional music, and I feel like the idea of field recorded sounds,
Yes.
similar to the idea of recording to tape and keeping things where like the recording, if not the actual recording technology, the approach to recording is similar. Is there what is your entry point into field recordings and traditional music, and where the decision to incorporate some of that in what you do?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's pretty murky, but I think it was always there. Like, what I liked, what drew me in was it's the sound. It's more than the songs. It was the sound of the recordings, and that's what I think was a big draw always, was what these field recordings sound like. Not some totally what they capture too, but I feel like for me it was the technology of those recordings, and that's, I think, carries through to the discovery of Harry Smith's anthology of American folk music. Kind of the mind blowing discovery of that anthology. But I had also read about it in Gabriel Marquez's Invisible Republic before, and I was already like into the idea of wishing I was a mole in the ground, and like this folklore and mythology, an American mythology. So that too, like the surrealism, for lack of a better word, of the imagery in those songs. But so much of it is the sounds of those 78s, the 78 recordings, and I think too, like the way they were recorded, the live, that they're recorded live and not multi-track, and like a song like Penny's Farm, where they you hear them lean in, you hear the banjos lean in to the mic, and it breaks my heart. It's so beautiful. It's just things like that, and trying to find that in other things. I felt like I'd been like grabbing at it in other things, and then that was, this is like the mother lode, And then I got into the Secret Museum of Mankind collections, which are the 78s of all over the world recordings and
Mhm.
same qualities. Oh, and then someone like Daniel Johnston, who just is doing that in his garage on, with, and it's, I love Daniel Johnston. Do I love the way he recorded those early albums even more than I love the songs,
Oh yeah.
you know, and how his voice sounds through a Radio Shack microphone or boombox, and how the tape quivers,
Yeah.
adds to the nuance of his vocal quiver.
Yeah. I was listening to a lot of the kind of like the boombox era of the Mountain Goats stuff this year. Are you familiar with that?
Right, right. I don't know. I guess I've never even Googled what was up with that cat, what he was doing.
It's recorded on a boombox.
Boombox, yeah.
I
So
mean,
it's just
not
like
all of it, but some of the albums
vibrating
are just
plastic.
yeah, just vibrating
Yeah.
plastic. Totally.
Right. Which is,
Yeah.
I don't know, that speaks to my heart more. I like a hot mic. I use I use a guitar mic for my voice. Now to this day, with like the net, whatever, the top screwed off, and just like, if I could, it's basically in my mouth, and it sounds the best to me.
Yeah.
Someone, when I started out, someone convinced me to get I don't know what they're called, Shure, I don't know, some vocal mic, the standard. And it always just sounded like you were listening with pillows on your ears or something. And I don't know, maybe my ears just need hot, the hot end, the high frequency, cracks to engage.
So, would you say? Well, here's a really interesting question.
All right.
This came up with Christian yesterday too.
Okay.
Feel like conversation should be had around like what are in sounds and what are out sounds, and if you even differentiate, and if so, like the sounds that you think of as being kind of like out or noisier sounds, like what about that palette appeals to you,
Okay.
or if you even hear them as out, you know what I mean? Like I feel like
Oh,
when we start talking about noise or about sounds that aren't, you know, culturally common or pop or what have you, sounds
yeah.
that aren't always heard in commercially things that are made specifically to be commercially viable.
Mhm.
What in that sound palette, because you use that sound palette, what in that sound palette appeals to you, and do you even make that distinction between in and out?
Yeah, I do. I just, for me, I have no knowledge of uh, musical theory or anything like that, and um, so I'm never sure what to call a thing that appeals to me. But it's usually the out stuff. I don't know what the science of them usually is, but I when I discovered for myself Charles Ives, that was a big eye opener as well. And sort of overlapping, conflicting melodies really appeal to me. And I think I write them very naturally. If I'm writing overdubs or something, I'll hear it in my head, okay, and I'll try to put that on the track. And wow, how did I think that was going to go on top of that?
Mm.
Um, but that stuff really appeals to me, and I want to stick to seeing it out more. And another thing that um, Rushan Roland Kirk is, I probably, if I had to pick a favorite musician, I would probably pick him. And there's something about the notes that are so close to each other but are off. And I don't think it's tempered. I'm not sure if it's tempered, but there's this dissonance in when he's playing two saxophones, or two horns, and things that are just close, but they're conflicting, is one of the sweeter sounds I can think of, that really appeals to me.
Mm-hmm. Do you think, like, when you're, do you think of those things as kind of being multi-use, or is there a certain goal that you're aiming for when you're using them, or a certain kind of particular appeal to things that sound out to you?
Is there an appeal to
Like, is there a certain, is it an emotional response? Is it a surprise? Is it just generally kind of liking the way that something sounds?
I think it is that, it's mostly just that. It's not like I'm not thinking of it as like, oh, what can I do here that's out, or I need an out thing. It's just what feels good to my ears, what sounds good, just to me, even though I know it, chances are it won't sound good to everybody who listens to it. But it's, and playing with people, I often chase after a pocket of, like, with a drummer, where it's at its best when it's somehow off, that it somehow got derailed, and that is just, it's a sweet spot that I nor the drummer, when I was playing with Tom Rensburg, we wouldn't know how to get there, intelligence wise. We would just have to mess up at some point, and we would nod to each other and know we were in that pocket a lot of times, and try to just play his song and me play my song, basically. And that's I don't know what that is, but there's an analogy of a derailed train. There's nothing sounds better to me than a derailed train. I don't know. I think I used to play, when I first started playing songs, I would play it all the same way every time. Play a song, it would sound, for months, would sound exactly the same way. And then I started realizing how much fun it is for it to change every time. And a variety there.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. And as you're creating kinetic sculptures that make sound, is there any inclination to incorporate those in songs that you've already created, to kind of reprocess songs with new sounds that you're creating?
I don't think I have done that, but that is, definitely an area to explore. And I guess I have done a similar sort of thing with a multi-track. If I have a song and then I'm not always arranging something specifically to go along with what I'm playing, but just a sound I would like to play that's sort of aleatory in a way. That's a big appeal to me. Or a certain movement or something that is hitting sound. A lot of percussion things that way. If I'm moving this way, it doesn't hit all the points of the melody or how the song's supposed to go. But sometimes that track is, worth saving, and sometimes that's all I do on multi-tracking, is create a sound that doesn't necessarily fit with the song in any way.
Have you ever done any dabbling with electronic music, with synthesizers and that kind of thing?
A little bit. I mean, we were talking about, my favorite instrument now is my SK1, the Casio, that does sampling, that everybody got.
I don't know.
Yeah. When I was a kid, this was like the coveted instrument. Or, a friend of ours got one for Christmas, and we make little, like, you know, fart noises and things like that, and you play
Yeah.
it back, and you know, and but and it was expensive though, so I didn't have one. But then I found one at Savers, 15 years ago for $5 or whatever. And I ended up getting a second one too, and they've become my favorite because you can record. I do it a lot for vocal. You record any sound you want, and then you just play it on the keyboard. And I know there are way more sophisticated versions of that people are. Sounds kind of what like Nick LeBlanc maybe did with his latest thing in a way,
Yeah.
you know. But this is the SK1 version of that, man. And I love the way vocals sound on it, and the microphone is a condenser mic, or it's really hot, and it sounds really great to me. So
You
that's
can
probably
record like a short sample of whatever you want, and then it pitches it to every key.
yeah.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. So usually I try to find. I don't think it's middle C or whatever. It might be A that you wanna. Then you'll have the scale that you can recognize if you sing to that. And a lot of times I just do like a ooh or whatever, like a angelic sound or whatever, vocal sound, or just a bizarre. I don't know. Yeah, it's that's become my go-to. If I'm gonna okay, I want to make music on this, I'm gonna get my SK1, and I also have a toy record player that has the toy record player you wind up and it reads a disc,
Yeah, like
little
multiple.
knobs. Yeah. The one I have, you flip that over and you can play the arm, the record player arm.
Oh.
It's a whole, it's what's interacting with those bumps, but you can play it like if you rub a music box wheel, kind of. And that's become one of my go-to sounds. It's in almost every of my video pieces from a couple of years back.
Yeah.
And it has a cluster sound, like the Roland Kirk thing. I think I was attempted to explain, because my thumb is this big, so it's hitting several notes that are not meant to be played at the same time, like a Henry Cowell playing with his forearm or something.
Yeah, that's cool. Yes, brings up a conversation that we kind of had on the internet the other day about samples and new technology in music and that kind of thing. That conversation just came prominently to the forefront with AI visual art. And obviously it's been here since, at least Paul's Boutique and Jay Dilla's Donuts, and people like putting sample upon sample upon sample into songs. AI feels like a kind of extension of that conversation. Do you use any samples of other people's work, like quoting, that kind of thing?
Quoting I think is different. I never use a sample of recorded sound. Not for like a moral reason, more as like, I don't know, like maybe an ego-driven reason. That and I don't really even like cover songs, kind of thing. It falls under that category to me. It's not territory I like to dabble in. But yeah, I use bird sounds a lot in my films, almost comically all the time. And if I had I don't want to, pass the buck here, but if I had a better recording for field recording, I think I would lean toward doing field recording a lot more of sound, concrete, music, concrete stuff. Yeah, concrete. Thank you. So in that way, that's sampling, but I feel like there's an ownership of
Right.
recording it,
Right. Right.
But I've never dabbled with, heck no, I mean, when I first started, but that's like doing physical things with 45s and making records skip, not scratching really, but my buddy Shannon built this disc that could make a record skip at a certain point if you cut a slit into it, and we experimented with that a lot. Yeah, I forget about that stuff. Early stuff, I used to do that a
Yeah, that's
lot,
interesting. That's like
but
kind
I
of like
failed on that.
super early technology sampling. Making
Right.
records skip on certain spots.
Yeah, I think that appeals to me, and it's not really oh, I don't like this other way. That's not, I think I like making things happen in the physical world.
Hmm.
Um, has a big appeal to me. But I've just never, you had that device for hooking up your music to your computer, your mics or whatever to the computer, and I have a couple of those. Doug gave me one. Um, but I haven't figured out how to use it yet. I still have not figured out how to make music happen on my computer. Uh,
Yeah.
and I think I would like it. It's just daunting to me.
Yeah, the initial learning curve's a pain, but
Right,
honestly, it is unbelievably convenient.
right. And I like visually, I do it on iMovie or whatever, and I copy and paste the audio tracks, and,
Hmm.
slow them down. I certainly have become a fan of just being able to slow things down.
Hmm.
A bird song slowed down 50% can be a really fascinating
Hmm.
sound. Um, but yeah, I still have not really gone into that world of digital recording,
Yeah, yeah.
20 years still of whatever.
I
Speaking of Dan Smith,
I had like the in between setup. I had one of those like digital Tascam kind of things. It was not. It was actually made by
oh,
Yamaha, but it was like a thing where it was like it wasn't on the laptop, but it was no longer tape. So you were recording digitally, but it was like in the computer. And I have to say, like the first week that I had to learn how to do the thing on the laptop, I found it really frustrating because it was all new technology. But now it is just it's so much easier than all of the other things. If only because it's like it packs up into the size of a laptop. And
right.
I mean that not that the Tascam and stuff like that was big before, but the troubleshooting thing doesn't exist, and it's I don't know.
My Tascam was big.
And it's like there are things that are both benefits and dangers to it. It's like you can layer 700 things on top of each other if you want to. There's really no limitation.
Right. Well, I think with me making my music on iMovie basically now, I can only really layer 3 tracks, on
Hmm.
top. If you cut them, you can put 3 in any up down pattern. You can fit them in.
Hmm.
But that's nice because, yeah, I joke that my Tascam was big. I had the 8-track Tascam as my like upgrade after my 4-track died, which is just it was kind of too many tracks for me having 8 on that tape. The width of the tape. I didn't listen to any of people that were saying there's not enough room on there for that much sound information. But and being into Ives and conflicting melodies, and I don't know, I'm not saying this stuff, I didn't love this stuff, but it's a lot. That was a lot of room, even 8 tracks.
Yeah,
It's kind of nice to have less.
yeah. It's interesting. You mentioned earlier working within limitations. Like it's nice even to have self-imposed limitations. I guess people have made things over the years like sonnets had a structure or whatever. Like even music concrete. We were just talking about like a lot of times that stuff has like movements, you know. I mean, it has, you hear like a certain set of sounds, then you hear another set of sounds. The first set of sounds may come back again, you know.
Right.
Having structures or having a limitation of how many tracks you can use. Cool. Well, we're coming up on the end of our time. I guess, you know, from where we started with the conversation, it's more visual art than anything else like that for you right now.
Yeah.
But you said you might have a couple things kind of percolating in your mind.
Yeah, totally. There's a place to go. It's just, yeah, what will it be? And I think with, with the pandemic taking a lot of step back, such a long step back, makes me wonder what has gotten me thinking about, what I really would want to put out into the world,
Mm-hmm.
or even just you and I talked about recently, just what I have time for,
Yeah.
Time is a finite thing.
That's such a strange, well, not strange, but it's a definite challenge for parents and people
Right.
our age with young kids. I mean, trying to find a way to create within the confines of a life that involves like being an active parent.
Yeah, absolutely. Just finding studio time or whatnot. It's a bit of a challenge.
Yeah.
And then, what's worth doing when you get together with other grown-ups and who have juggled everything to make this window of time,
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Carl.
Oh, thank you.
It was good talking to you.
All right. Good talking to you too, Jeff.
Okay, thanks. This
Bye.
Jeff Angeley signing off with Carl Simmons for the Artist Index, Southcoast Artist Index. We'll talk to you soon.
We'll see you next week for another episode of the Southcoast Artist Index podcast. To learn more about the Southcoast Artist Index, visit theartistindex.com. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.